Hello, welcome to the Daily News Ukraine channel. Today is January 6th and our daily review of news about Ukraine. Several Orthodox churches in Donetsk and other settlements across the occupied territories may be blown up during the festive morning service on January 7th. That's according to a report by the Napalm International Volunteer Community, Ukrinform SA. According to two Napalm sources close to the DPR militants, there is a high likelihood that several Orthodox churches in Donetsk and other settlements in the territories occupied by the Russists may be mined and blown up during the festive morning service on January 7 in order to shoot propaganda reports for the domestic Russian audience and thus create a pretext for a new wave of mobilization, the report reads. As noted, the said information was received on January 4 and 5, but the organization tried to collect additional data. Read also, Putin sees occupied Crimea, Belarus as areas fit for nuclear provocation. Intel. We believe that Putin's public statement about his intentions to declare a ceasefire, which appeared in the afternoon, may be indirect evidence of media preparations to the specified act of terror as yet another false flag operation, already traditional for the Russian Federation, the community reported. The organization cites a source indicating the possibility that the Russians are planning to use in their propaganda reports HIMARS munitions fragments collected at the actual strike sites as evidence of the Ukrainian involvement in the attacks. We have very little time left to gather additional evidence, so we are releasing this incomplete data in the hope that the plot of the Russists will be thwarted through publicity. We currently have no information on the specific locations where the bombs have been planted, so we urge all civilians in the occupied territories to refrain from attending church services, so as not to become a victim of Russia's bloody provocation. Celebrate Christmas at home with your family and avoid crowded venues, the volunteer community warns. The President of the European Council, Charles Michel, referred to Russia's announcement of a Christmas ceasefire along the entire line of combat in Ukraine false and hypocritical, as were the illegal annexations and pseudo-referenda. The top official wrote about this on Twitter, including in the Ukrainian language, reports Ukrinform. There's an aggressor, the Kremlin. And a victim, the Ukrainian people. Withdrawal of Russian troops is only serious option to restore peace and security. Announcement of unilateral ceasefire is as bogus and hypocritical as the illegal and grotesque annexations and accompanying referenda, Michel wrote. Read also, Russia's Christmas ceasefire proposal to do nothing to promote peace. Britain's top diplomat, as reported by Ukrinform. Earlier Russian propaganda media said Russian President Vladimir Putin allegedly ordered that a ceasefire regime be introduced from 12 o'clock on January 6 to 2400 hours on January 7 along the entire line of contact between the warring parties in Ukraine. For his part, the advisor to the head of the Ukrainian president's office, Mikhailo Podolyak, said that a temporary truce would only be possible after Russia withdrew from the temporarily occupied territories because Ukraine fights against Russian troops but does not invade foreign lands and kill civilians. Photo, EPAEFE. Head of the president's office, Andriy Yermak, believes that key events in the war will unfold in the winter and spring, and that they will climax in the return of all Ukrainian territories. He expressed this opinion on Telegram, Ukrinform reports. Winter is important, as well as our spring. Key events are ahead, which should culminate in the return of all our territories. We are doing our best together with our allies so that the army has everything needed to this end. Ukraine will win, the head of the president's office emphasized. Read also, Russia's Christmas ceasefire proposal to do nothing to promote peace. Britain's top diplomat, as reported, as of December 28, Ukraine managed to liberate more than 1,800 villages and towns from the Russian invaders. Russian troops have already killed 453 children across Ukraine since invasion start. That's according to the Prosecutor General's office, Ukrinform reports. As of the morning of January 6, 2023, more than 1,330 children were affected in Ukraine as a result of the Russian full-scale armed aggression. According to the official information provided by juvenile prosecutors, 453 children were killed and 877 sustained injuries of varying severity, the statement reads. The data is not final as efforts are underway to verify reports coming from active hostility zones, temporarily captured and liberated territories. Read also, Russia's military death toll in Ukraine reaches 109,720. The largest numbers of affected children were recorded in Donetsk region, 429, Kharkiv region, 268, Kiev region, 117, Kherson region, 83, Mykolaiv region, 81, Zaporizhia region, 81, Chernihiv region, 68, Luhansk region, 65, and Dnipropetrovsk region, 40. On January 5, a 12-year-old boy was killed along with his family in Berislav, Kherson region, as a result of enemy shelling, when a projectile hit a residential building. A total of 3,126 educational facilities were damaged due to bombardments and shelling by the Russian armed forces, of which 337 were completely destroyed. As Ukrinform reported, 329 Ukrainian children are considered missing, while over 12,000 have been deported. The head of the British Foreign Office, James Cleverly, criticized Russia's statements offering a ceasefire regime along the entire line of combat on Christmas. The minister commented on the issue on Twitter, as seen by Ukrinform. A 36-hour pause of Russian attacks will do nothing to advance the prospects for peace. Russia must permanently withdraw its forces, relinquish its illegal control of Ukrainian territory, and end its barbaric attacks against innocent civilians, Cleverly wrote. Read also, Danilov calls Russia's Christmas truce a lie and hypocrisy as reported by Ukrinform. Earlier Russian propaganda media said Russian President Vladimir Putin allegedly ordered that a ceasefire regime be introduced from 12 o'clock on January 6 to 2400 hours on January 7 along the entire line of contact between the warring parties in Ukraine. For his part, the advisor to the head of the Ukrainian president's office, Mikhail Podolyak, said that a temporary truce would only be possible after Russia withdrew from the temporarily occupied territories because Ukraine fights against Russian troops but does not invade foreign lands and kill civilians. The Russian army killed 1 civilian and injured 3 more in Donetsk region on January 5. Pavlo Kirilenko, head of the Donetsk Regional Military Administration, said this in a Telegram post, Ukrinform reports. On January 5, Russians killed 1 civilian in Bakhmut, 3 more people were injured in the region, he wrote. Read also, Russians again shell Nikopol district, damaging houses and gas pipeline. He noted that it is currently impossible to establish the exact number of victims in Mariupol and Volnovakha. Photo, Donetsk Region's Police Department. The armed forces of Ukraine eliminated about 110,250 Russian troops in Ukraine from February 24, 2022 to January 6, 2023, including 530 over the past day alone. The General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine said this in a post on Facebook, according to Ukrinform. The enemy's total combat losses include also 3,064 tanks, plus 23 over the past day, 6,124 armored combat vehicles, plus 16, 2,059 artillery systems, plus 8, 431 multiple launch rocket systems, plus 5, 215 air defense systems, 285 aircraft, plus 1, 272 helicopters, plus 1, 4,797 motor vehicles, plus 38, 16 warships/cutters, 1,844 unmanned aerial vehicles, 182 special equipment units. A total of 723 enemy cruise missiles were shot down. The data is being verified, the General Staff noted. The Russian invaders again shelled the Nikopol district in Dnipropetrovsk region overnight. Valentin Reznichenko, head of the Dnipropetrovsk Regional Military Administration, wrote this on Telegram, Ukrinform reports. Script async src equals https://telegram.org/js/telegram widget.js 21 data telegram post equals Dnipropetrovsk ODA/2925 data width equals 100% /script. The Russians struck twice with heavy artillery. Dozens of enemy shells landed in two communities, Marinets and Chervonoryhorivka. People were not injured, he wrote. Several private houses, a gas pipeline and a power line were damaged. A farm building was destroyed. In other districts, an air raid alert was announced last night, but there were no emergency situations. Photo, Valentin Reznichenko, Telegram I. Maxar Technologies has published the satellite imagery of Bakhmut city in Donetsk region, comparing the images of the city's outskirts taken in August 2022 and now. They show significant destruction of buildings and infrastructure. The city has been the focus of intense battles between Russian and Ukrainian forces for the past 6 months, and the imagery reveals extensive damage to buildings and infrastructure. Before August 1, 2022, after January 4, 2023, Maxar posted on Twitter. As reported by Ukrinform, Maxar published the satellite imagery of Russian airfields, from which attacks are launched on Ukraine. New hashtag satellite imagery of the besieged city of hashtag Bakhmut, hashtag Ukraine. The city has been the focus of intense battles between Russian and Ukrainian forces for the past 6 months, and the imagery reveals extensive damage to buildings and infrastructure. Before August 1, 2022, after January 4, 2023. pic.twitter.com/isckjykf7r, Maxar Technologies, at Maxar, January 5, 2023. Photo, Maxar Technologies I. Over the past day, January 5, Russian troops conducted offensive operations in the Bakhmut and Lyman directions and attempted to improve their tactical position in the Kupiansk and Avdiivka direction, but had no success. The defense forces of Ukraine repelled enemy attacks near 12 settlements. This is said in the latest report of the General Staff of the Armed Forces of Ukraine published on Facebook, Ukrinform reports. The enemy is focusing its main efforts on attempts to establish control over the Donetsk region, is conducting offensive operations in the Bakhmut and Lyman directions. It is trying to improve the tactical position in the Kupiansk and Avdiivka directions, but has no success. Over the past day, units of the Defense Forces of Ukraine have repelled the occupiers' attacks in the areas of Stelmakivka, Makiivka, and Plashchenka in Luhansk region and Spern, Soldar, Krasnogora, Bakhmut, Klishchivka, Kurdyamivka, Pervomaysk, Mariinka, and Pobieda in Donetsk region, the report says. Over the past 24 hours, the enemy launched 17 airstrikes and carried out 59 attacks using multiple launch rocket systems, in particular, targeting the civil infrastructure. The General Staff stressed that the threat of air and missile strikes remains across the entire territory of Ukraine. On January 5, Ukraine's Air Force launched 15 strikes on the build-up areas of Russian invaders, as well as 3 strikes on the positions of enemy anti-aircraft missile systems. In addition, Ukrainian defenders shot down an enemy Su-25 aircraft and a Mi-8 helicopter. Ukrainian missile and artillery units inflicted fire damage on 2 areas of concentration of manpower and military equipment of the enemy. As reported, from February 24 to January 5, the Armed Forces of Ukraine eliminated about 109,720 Russian invaders, including 810 soldiers over the past day alone. Today we were talking about those news. Russians could blow up Orthodox churches in Donetsk, could on Christmas Day in act of provocation. OSINT group. Michel on Putin's truce offer, just as hypocritical as referenda. Yermak, key events ahead to culminate in return of all Ukrainian territories. In Ukraine, 453 children killed, 877 injured amid Russian aggression. Russia's Christmas ceasefire proposal to do nothing to promote peace, Britain's top diplomat. 1 civilian killed, 3 more injured in Donetsk region. Ukraine's armed forces destroy another 530 Russian invaders, 23 tanks, 1 aircraft. Russians again shell Nikopol district, damaging houses and gas pipeline. Maxar publishes satellite imagery of destroyed Bakhmut. Ukraine's armed forces repel enemy attacks near 12 settlements.